people.
Yep.
Crazy.
Yeah, my sister deals with engineers, and she says it's pretty much the same things on the video conferences.
Yep.
They just wait
All
and they
right.
just keep arguing.
All right, we're live, everyone.
Hooray!
All right. Welcome to Romancing the Capital, the online romance convention. I'm Jody Kendrick, and I'll be moderating this panel, which is called Fetch the Silver, Garlic, and Holy Water. It's paranormal time. So, introduce yourselves. Let us know who you are, what you write, and what location you're calling in from. So, I guess we'll start with Millie.
Hello, my name is Millie Taden. I write paranormal romance featuring curvy girls and furry guys. I'm from New York originally, and I currently live in Florida. And yeah, that's it. Next person. Oops, sorry, I forgot that. Viola.
Oh, okay. I'm Viola Grace. I write paranormal. I write science fiction. I write just about anything. And I'm calling in from Winnipeg, Manitoba. So we're just thawing out here, so the confinement is not as bad as it is for some other people, but hopefully this provides a distraction. And now I'm going to pass on to Marianne.
Marianne, you're muted.
Okay, can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry about that. There were fire trucks and EMTs, and there's like 5 fire trucks that just went down the bottom of my hill. So I hope everybody's okay. Anyway, I'm Marianne Barea. I write urban fantasy, paranormal romantic suspense. I write sometimes historical fantasy within my urban fantasy. Like my vampires are so old that I might take my characters back in time, so they can kind of see the how, what, when, and where of how they were created, and what brought them to where they are here today. I am in New York. I live about 30 miles from ground zero of the COVID-19 epicenter that hit New York, which is New Rochelle. And we have been self-quarantining for 3.5 weeks right now. So anyway, as you can tell by my roots. So I'm going to pass it on to whoever is next. I can't see. I guess Viola? You next?
Do you want to go into Alice next?
Everybody else is muted here.
Alice, do you want to go next?
Sure, I can go next. I'm Ellis Lee. I write paranormal romance. I dabble in sci-fi romance. I write contemporary under the name Kristen Hart as well. And I am calling in from the northwest suburbs of Chicago. Hi, we've been quarantined for about the same, 3.5 weeks. Oh, and next, sorry about that. Cassidy.
Hi, everyone. I'm Cassidy K. O'Connor. I also write in multiple genres. Paranormal does tend to be my largest genre. I think I have like 20-something books out. I am in the Tampa, Florida area. I write a lot of the more unusual shifters. I just did a Mormo, which is like the grandmothers of vampires. And then I do like gargoyles and white tigers and ligers, different things like that. So yeah, that's me. Has Jessica gone yet?
Jessica's not participating, but we have Jen.
Hi, I'm Jen Burke. I live just outside of Ottawa in a little town called Almont, Ontario. I write paranormal romance, male, so I write gay romance. And I also do a bit of science fiction romance in the past, but my next few books are going to be paranormal. So, hi.
Hi, so is that everybody? I think we've got everybody. All right, so first question. What made you start writing in this genre and what made you stay? And I guess we can go ahead and start again with Melly.
Well, paranormal romance kind of chose me. I started writing when I was a little kid, and somehow my characters always had some type of weird, strange, magical ability. And so it just grew into, werewolves, shifters, vampires, and just just kept going from there. And once I started getting published, I just knew that that was where I wanted to focus on, and I felt right at home with it. So it's always been paranormal for me. It's just came naturally. Um, so that's it. Thank you.
All right, thanks. So Viola, do you want to go next?
Sure. I write in the paranormal genre because I like fairy tales. I like Greek mythology. I like the magic that's hidden under everything. And I like to bring it out and show it to people. That's pretty much it.
Great. What about Alice?
Like Millie, I've always been a fan of the paranormal aspects in stories. I was a big John Saul reader. I liked a lot of urban fantasy when I got into my teen years and a little later. But I got very tired of, like the storylines where they're with one person and then somebody else comes in and now they got to choose between the two. And why choose? Why can't you have both? So I moved more into the paranormal romance realm. And when I decided to start writing, that's just where my brain went. And I love it. I still love it. It's my favorite to write, my favorite to read. And I don't see leaving it anytime soon.
Great. Cassidy?
So when I first started writing, I've been to Ireland multiple times. I love the country, everything like that. And I just kind of fell in love with the idea of, Irish fairies and all of the different magic that they could have and what you could do with those stories. So that's kind of where I started. And then it just kind of veered off and started creating, like whole towns and stuff like that. And then I've written a few in Millie's worlds as well. But yeah, it started for me with the Irish fairies just because I liked the mystical side of it and how you can do so much with the story because you can create your own rules. I think that's the fun side of paranormal. So, yeah.
Great. Marianne?
For me, I guess my earliest memory of anything paranormal had to be when I was about 5 years old or so. I'm completely dating myself. And I remember watching Dark Shadows, the original with Jonathan Frid, sitting on the floor while my mom folded laundry back in the day. And I remember it affected me so much. And ever since then, it was always the what ifs, that kind of got me. It was, what if there is this subculture that's walking around alongside us that, the whispers in the from the shadows and the tricks of light that happen, when you're walking in the dark, when it's darkened and, there's nothing but the moonlight playing tricks on your eyes. What if they're not tricks? What if it's something else, something, supernatural? And it was just the whole romance of it just left me breathless thinking about it, to the point where, I all I wanted to do was write as a kid. And I finally started doing it for real, I guess about 9 years ago. And I love it. It's even when I've tried to write contemporary, that's where my head kind of goes. It just kind of goes right to the paranormal, right to the supernatural. But in terms of romance, it was like romance was always part of it. But it wasn't the main thrust of the story because there was always suspense involved. And dark. I tend to kind of get dark. So when I, writing with Millie, when we did our Howells romances and when I wrote in her Kindle world, was really an exercise for me on how to be lighter and funnier because I have a great sense of humor. I make people laugh in my regular world, in my real world. But in my writing, it always tends to go to the dark side. So it was really good for me to kind of find that sweet spot that I'm trying to put into my books now.
That's great. And how about you, Jen?
So when I think back about how I got into enjoying paranormal romance, it started with Mercedes Lackey and Tanya Huff. I must have been in like 14, 15. The Vicki Nelson series and the Diana Tragard series that they both had. And it was really kind of an eye-opening thing for me because I had read like fantasy books and I had read science fiction books when I was a teenager or younger than that. And I had not really, these were the first series I read that were set in the real world with magic everywhere. Charles DeLint is on that list too. And, it just kind of opened my eyes that, hey, this could be a thing. This is really cool. And then I discovered the Silhouette Shadows category paranormal romances that were, a big deal in the 90s or late 80s. And I basically went to my local used bookstore and I kind of glommed all of those, all the ones I could find, like $1 a piece or something like that. So that's really when I started writing, it was always going to be something set in the real world, but with magic or some other paranormal element to it. And I'm like the rest of you, when I've tried to write contemporary, I'm like, okay, but where's the magic? What other items can I throw in? Like what about the paranormal plot with the paranormal world? And so I haven't dipped my toes into the contemporary world yet. Paranormal is still my favorite and probably will be for a while.
It's great. So I'm just going to have a quick look over at the chat, and Pamela Shepard says, thank you everyone for taking the time out of your schedule to be with us today. Hugs to you, and I'll stay safe. And she commented that Dark Shadows was one of the best shows. Sue Thomas, what is the most paranormal thing that you have created? And thank you to each of you for being here. Stay safe and stay healthy. Hugs for Easter. So,
well, the most paranormal thing that I've created, if I can jump in on that.
Yep.
So my latest series is Not Dead Yet, and the main character is what I call a not ghost. So he's a guy who died in 1933 and was resurrected by a witch, except she kind of messed up and he came back as an immortal who could change into a ghost form. So, fast forward to 2019 and he witnesses a murder while he's using his skills of turning into a ghost as a thief. So he goes into businesses or whatever. He's hired to recover things. He calls himself a recovery specialist. And he witnesses a murder, so he has to reach out to his ex, who he hasn't seen for 33 years, who is now close to 60, and a detective with Toronto Police to help solve the murder because he knows that it was something paranormal that killed the woman that he was on the job for. So probably Wes, the not ghost, is the most paranormal thing I've ever created because I've never seen anything else like that. It's not a tried and true vampire or a regular ghost or werewolf or whatever. So a little bit different.
Thanks. Does anyone else want to jump in?
Yeah,
Sure.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. It's fine. I'll go after you.
For me, it would be the Nexus Chronicles, my gnomes of suburbia. Just regular garden gnomes that get into all kinds of havoc behind the scenes. They're perfectly blend in the middle of a yard. They just have to stand still and no one sees them. So it's magic out where anybody can see it, but nobody's looking. I'm done.
Okay. For me, I think the most paranormal thing I ever created isn't one particular entity. It would have to be my world. It would have to be the vampire lore that I created for the Cursed by Blood series, where my vampires, that if they're killed with kindness or compassion or any kind of good intention, they retain the entire spectrum of human emotion. But if they're killed with cruelty and vice, that those are the only emotions that they retain. And it's very hard for some of the vampires that I've been able to pull back from the precipice of the abyss to be able to reconnect with the shreds of their humanity. But if I had to talk about entities, I guess it would have to be my character, that was half succubus, half witch, and she was pretty interesting to carry. Yeah, she was pretty interesting to create because she thought she was a witch when she really wasn't. It was in Bewitch Me was the name of the book that I wrote it, and she turns out to be not quite what everybody thought she was, and that was kind of a neat twist.
So
Next.
for me, like Marianne said, for me too, the Black Hollow world that I created with a couple other authors, we decided to get pretty creative with it, in that like our mermaids run the fish and chip shop, and our Yeti runs the ice cream store, and our mummy knows cloth, so he is a tailor and stuff like that. So I think that whole we've got some pretty creative things in there. But just last night I had to create a bunch of secondary characters, and I was trying to go with as many different unique ones as I could think of, and I ended up with a basilisk shifter who's still a virgin because he doesn't know if his bodily fluids are going to be poisonous, so he's scared to try anything with anyone. So like I said, I have the Mormo, who's not a vampire, she's the grandmother of vampires. So I try to pick some weird unique ones too, but that's for me.
Does anyone else want to add to that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think for my Crystal Kingdom series, I merged lots of magic and magical creatures with our unique shifters, and I think that was the beginning of a very interesting but also different type of fantasy paranormal, and I think it was probably as paranormal as I'm gonna get, because it was just so out there from both sides.
Great, thank you. All right, so the next question is from Nikki Bao. She says, I got hooked on paranormal romance after I read Tiger Eye by Marjorie M. Liu. What got you hooked on writing other than paranormals that weren't mainstream, like gargoyles, unicorns, etc.? Just go ahead, whoever wants to answer.
I guess I'll jump in. I only have those secondary types of characters, and I have to actually correct myself, and it's really embarrassing that I can't even remember characters in my books, because when you're writing a book now, sometimes the books you've written a couple of months ago kind of fade. But it was a Blood and Magic, not Bewitch Me, where I had the succubus. But those secondary characters are where I go for the fun things, the gargoyles and I had a hobgoblin, which is it's like kind of a half fae, half goblin creature in Bewitch Me, because Bewitch Me was the first it's the fifth book in my Red Veil Diary, but it was my first venture into the land of Fae, and it was so much fun to write because of the kind of creatures that you can research and then mesh, and it was just wonderful. And it kind of gave me a flavor for writing those offbeat, non-mainstream paranormals. So yeah, good question.
Would anyone else like to answer?
Yeah, so I've got a couple of. So I have the Wes, the not ghost. So he's kind of I guess, a non-traditional shifter. And then I have another series that basically the characters in that are kind of mythological shifters. So I have griffin shifters, and I have dragon shifters, and I had like a storm elemental, and it's what kind of got me into writing that is that I wanted to write something. So this was for a specific call from a publisher, and I wanted to write something that was a little bit different, so it wasn't the regular werewolves and that kind of thing, and so I decided to try doing this mythological thing, and it was really fun because I had a chance to make it my own, because I don't know too many other people who write griffin shifters, so there was no preconceived notion about what they could or couldn't do. So that was really cool, because I could, I decided that, okay, they could change into a griffin, but they could also change into an eagle, or they could change into a smaller bird if they needed to, or they could change into a lion, or they could change into a cat. Like, it was, they had all these different options that were available because nobody had really written it before. So it was a lot of fun writing those books.
So I kind of fell into the otter character because, like I said, I started with the Irish fairies, but then I was writing a book, and I had the girl. She worked in a women and children's abuse shelter, and she'd go up to the roof to just kind of let out steam and stuff like that. And she was always talking to the gargoyle statue and stuff. And so I just ended up turning him into a shift. Basically, he was cursed, and because she was his true soulmate, he was able to break that curse and come back to life. But I ended up so he was kind of he was originally a human cursed to a gargoyle. So then when we created the Black Hollow Town, I created this whole other section of born gargoyles, if you want to call it, however you want to say it. And so he joined their group, and I did fall in love with writing them because they are so physically strong and everything, and they can be very aggressive when they want to be, or very sweet when they want to be. So that's actually my first 4 books in Black Hollow are all the main character is one of the gargoyles. But like I said, other than that, that's pretty much what I write is the uniques. I don't know what got me started on it, other than I just, it kind of made sense for me when she was up there spending all that time with the statue to end up making it into a shifter. And that's kind of how I got started.
For me, so when I write any kind of shifter, I really like to focus on what that particular animal is actually like, how they group, how they mate, how they live their lives. And so after writing wolves and bears and dragons at that point, I ended up writing a half wolf, half tiger shifter. So I had to research tigers and how they live their lives. And that kind of took me down a little rabbit hole, if you will, and spun off. I wrote a PNR comedy series for Kindle Unlimited, my Mates and Macarons series, that features the first 3 are wolf, bear, dragon. And then, I have an eagle shifter, and I have, excuse me, my allergies this year, my goodness. An eagle shifter, a fox shifter. I have a wolverine shifter. The next one is actually a reindeer shifter, who lived in North Pole, Alaska. But that was how, just kind of wanting to learn more about the animals themselves, and then bringing those traits into the people. I don't get too far outside of that. I haven't done any fantasy creatures other than dragons, obviously. I kind of stay with whatever creatures are earthbound. But it's really fun to set that up and to research a little bit and learn it as you go.
Great, thank you.
Hi.
Anyone else want to answer?
Yeah, sure.
Hi.
Okay. For me, it depends on which series I'm talking about. If I'm writing as my alter ego, then I have the Shifting Crossroads series, and that's just all the permutations and combinations of different shifters getting together and somehow making making things right. Just getting past their differences and living a life together. But aside from that, I also have my Obscure Magic series where I try to make magic normal and make normal magical, if that makes any sense. The humans in that world are the underdog. They're the smallest point of the population. Everybody else is shifters or um, wizards or mages or elves or dragons or whatever. But humans, something that looks absolutely human, enjoys a certain amount of protection. Unfortunately for the character in the first book in the series, her her ancestors have intermarried so many times, not with each other, but just through different species, that they create a magical creature who looks perfectly human. So that's the one part human, and just being one part human is, you know, is all the magic she needs. Of course, never mind. But it gets weird after that. Um, and in the Covert Dragon series, it's all about being perfectly normal until the day you're not. And those are just tropes and things that really appeal to me, and I enjoy writing them. Thank you.
Great, thanks. All right. Millie, did you answer that question?
I have not.
Do you want to?
Yeah, sure. What was the question? I'm sorry. My allergies are just got me.
Oh, that's okay. What got you hooked on writing other paranormals that weren't mainstream?
Okay. Um, uh, I'm not one of the people that writes unusual paranormal all the time. I think the most unusual I've gotten recently was my fantasy Crystal Kingdom series, and so and that's 4 books, and then I've written a couple other here and there, but the bulk of my books have been the regular large predator shifters. Um, I found that I enjoyed taking like a magical creature and turning it into a shifter, which was different. And it was funny because it just felt natural to me. I think it's probably because I'm just so used to, and like my preference is to write a shifter, but then I chose a unique animal for them to shift into because it was mixing it up with fantasy. So I think that's what makes that series so different and fun. I love the Crystal Kingdom, and readers seem to enjoy it too because of the uniqueness of it, and it's not the typical shifters. I mean, I have like a hellhound in there, and mixed with like an elf, and so it's a lot of fun to create unique and different characters, but you have to feel like that is how your character wants to be. It should come natural. It shouldn't feel like, oh well, I'm just gonna write something new, and then it just confuses you because you don't really this isn't what you normally write. So that's why it was a lot of fun to do it because it just came natural.
Great, thank you. So the next 2 questions from the viewers are about characters. So Pamela Shepard says, you say that the genre chose you, but how did you and do you create a character? And I'll follow that up with a second question, which is what paranormal character is the hardest to write? So if you want to take either angle or both of those, go ahead. It's about your character creation.
I can start, I guess. I like to create a character with damage or issues in their past, lock them into that, and then show their evolution going forward. That's just how I like to design them because nobody gets out of life without some kind of scars. That's it.
Thank you.
I guess I'll go next. Is that? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead, Alice. Did you want to go first? Oh no. Okay. I guess I agree with Viola. My characters all, especially my vampires, have all faced something horrific. And they've all had to overcome just waking to darkness. And even if they were created with kindness and with compassion, they're still predators. I mean, it's a fight with them every single page for them to rise above their base nature. So that's something that I think kind of resonates with me, just even in terms of humanity. I mean, like what we're going through right now with COVID-19. I mean, I was in the supermarket and actually saw a woman my age spit at another woman and said, here's some Corona for you, because they were fighting over a package of toilet paper. So and then at the other side, you see people who are just going above and beyond and really showcasing and celebrating their humanity and their kindness towards their fellow man. So I've incorporated all those elements into my characters, and that's how I kind of approach any character that I create, not just the vampires. Is that you can be what you want to be, warts and all, basically. And the second part of your question was, the hardest character to create, the hardest character to write. I think those characters for me are the heroines who are a compilation of myself and a lot of the other strong women in my life who have had to either overcome something or, just evolve, as you get older in life, to be strong and to be able to have a voice. And that is something that is one of the hardest things for me to write without me making the character sound like a bitch or a shrew, to have her be strong, but at the same time be kind, without being too hard. It's like, the hard candy coating with the soft gushy inside, that's kind of what I aim for every time. So.
Great, thank you.
Going along with that, I think that building characters are so different for all of us. It's such a unique process. My co-writer for my London Hale name, she does this. It's like 600 questions about a character. How big are your hands? And like these things where I'm like, I would never think of that, because to me, it's every human being on earth has a base need. It's a psychological concept. It's kind of like coming from a trauma or whatever. Everybody has a base need, and it could be a positive need or a negative need. To go super simple, children of alcoholics need stability, but because they don't know it, they destroy it when it comes close to them. So when I have a character who their base need is stability, they're looking for this in life for a stable world. Every decision they make, everything that they do, every step that they take is based on, I need stability, but they're going to screw it up because that's just what they have to do. They have to go through hard times as well. You can't get it easy. So yeah, that's how I do mine, is just dropping down into the very simplest of terms of what is it that they need, because everybody's searching for something.
I find the hardest ones to write are your mainstreams, like your wolves, your bears, because vampires, because there's so much lore. And so to me, I feel more constrained when I'm trying to write them, because you could go really crazy with something and get completely obliterated for it, because you really strayed from the lore and everything. So I to try to stay to the more unique characters. I think, I just was thinking about it while I was talking. I think that's why I do. I like that there's less rules around the more unique shifters because they're just not as well written, not as well written, but there's just not as much written about them and everything. I had a friend who just did a Cupid, and she ended up creating a ton of Cupid lore, and it got seriously creative, and I loved it. And I like immediately messaged her. I was like, oh my God, I have to write a Cupid now because I loved her lore and everything. And so then I am, I guess, boxing myself into her rules now and stuff. But I think that has kind of, I think just the amount of rules, like, when Twilight came out and her vampires twinkled, I mean, that was a huge shift from the lore. And that was really a brave choice of hers to try, and obviously it paid off for her. But, I think in the lower world, a lot of us can't get away with that kind of thing. So I think that's why I do stay away from that. And I think because we're all writing the same characters, though, it is very, difficult to write any character because how is your character going to be unique? How is your character going to be so amazing that the reader falls in love with it and everything? So there is that pressure to really make sure that the characters are the best they can possibly be and not sound like everybody else's. So that's mine.
One of the things that I try to do with my characters is give them flaws. So that may mean that some readers don't like my characters, my main characters, and that's just kind of something that I've accepted. Like Wes in the Not Dead Yet series, he basically stopped evolving at age 23. And even though he is, by years, he's 110, he still acts a lot like a 23-year-old. So that was one of the things that was pointed out quite a bit in reviews of the book, that a lot of people didn't quite grasp that and didn't agree with it, didn't like it. But that was him. He is a self-centered guy. He's been on his own for 80 years, and except for spending 5 years with his ex, who he reconnects with then 33 years later. But that was something that he had to be like that. And it's kind of tough when you're writing a character and that people aren't going to be okay with some of these flaws, but that's just who he is. So it's writing a character there's a lot of bravery that goes into it, because you have to make choices that maybe you don't really like, or that you don't necessarily agree with, but that seems to be where the character is going, and how that's just his makeup. So
I find that I mean I understand that there's I think everyone has their own rules for what their characters and the type of shifter or vampire or whatever that they write is. But I actually just I write whatever comes. So it's really not it's not like I go by any specific rules. I mean, I tend to remember and use the general rules on when it comes to shifters or when it comes to vampires and stuff. But I write whatever the character, however it comes to me, and I don't really worry about somebody else's rules, because this is my book, so it's gonna be my way.
yeah, I agree with that 100%. There are vampires in my world that aren't like vampires from other worlds, and I think that's okay, because these are archetypes that we're playing with, right? Like you can take the characters that other people might be familiar with and twist them a little bit so that it's something new and fresh. And I think that's one of the fun things about writing paranormal, is that we have this basis that we can draw on for our characters, or our tropes or plots or what have you, but we don't necessarily have to follow that. We can say, okay, so in my world, werewolves and vampires are actually best friends. They're not at war. Or you can write a story where they are at war and then put your own twist on it. So it's whatever works for you and your characters, I think.
I guess I agree. I agree with that too. like in my lore, in my Cursed by Blood series, in the offshoot, the Red Veil Diaries, witch blood is it's like a roll of the dice. It can either, if a vampire hooks up with a witch and he bites her, he could either die or have the most rapturous ecstasy, ecstatic experience of his life. So it's kind of a crapshoot. Do I want to take this risk with this chick? So, but and Jen, I have to speak to you about. You said you got shit or crap for having a character that didn't evolve, that was 22 years old. Well, I had a blogger once rip me a new one because my character is a 1,200-year-old vampire who was turned when he was 22 during the Crusades, and that she was complaining because he was more like Ned Stark, the patriarch, instead of a normal 22-year-old. And I'm thinking to myself, after 1,200 years, you would think, okay, yeah, he is going to be kind of old school, because he's going to be old, because he's evolved. So there's no winning in that situation. And like Millie said, you have to write the character that comes to you in your head. You have to be true to that character that is banging on the inside of your skull.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Yep, we're writing monsters. And as long as the logic behind our universes are the ones that we want to end up with, all's good.
Yeah.
It's great. So the next question from Kimmy Diane Seeley is, what is your writing kryptonite?
You said kryptonite?
Kryptonite.
Pandemics. Chaos really is mine. Anytime that there's chaos around me, can't write at all. It just doesn't work for me. I assume that's what she means by kryptonite, like the thing that makes you not be able to do your thing.
I would think so. No.
Yeah, I'm totally with you there. Yeah, I totally 100% agree with that. as soon as all of, hell starts breaking loose, my creativity really does suffer. So the last few weeks have been hard. I'm totally there with you, Alice.
See, I'm the total opposite. I've been writing like crazy during this insanity. I think more because I just don't want to deal with what's going on out there. So I would rather deal with one of my worlds.
Mm-hmm.
But also I think I have this whole survival instinct that immediately kicks in, and it's like, okay, I know that shit is getting like to a point that I don't know what's going to happen. So I need to work, make sure that, that I have books, that this is what I do so that they're ready, and for whatever's going to come. I think that's, but if we're talking the opposite, what actually is, that is the question, what is my writing kryptonite? Then I'd say that it's probably when everything's going perfectly, because then I just get really relaxed and I don't want to do anything. I just want to hang out. I just want to go out, so that is probably, so this is like really fantastic for me. It's like perfect, time right now. I've written 3 books in like 2 weeks. So, it's awesome, but not in a good way. You know what I mean? You guys understand.
Doomsday diva.
Yeah, I'm newly working at home for the evil day job, which actually isn't all that evil. So I'm in my office all day, and so when my work day is done, like the last thing I want to do is continue to sit in my office. So I'm finding it tough to get some writing in. I'm trying to get a few hundred words in here and there as I can. But it's really thrown my schedule out of whack, and just the stress of, trying to figure out how to do my job at home when I'm not with, all my coworkers, the team that I work with, and adapt to that. It's been really stressful. It's evening out a bit. I think we're finding our stride, but it's still, a huge adjustment. So I'm trying to be very kind to myself and not freak myself out, except I do have a story that's due on May 1st. So I will start freaking out next week.
Well, for me, kryptonite comes in the form of smacking into a sex scene. not in a anyway. But there's no way I could make that sound better. And I'll do anything. I'll do anything to avoid writing it. I'll run downstairs. I'll do some laundry. I'll mop a floor. I'll scrub a toilet. Anything to avoid doing a sex scene. And I mean, but aside from that, as Millie said, I mean, it's like this is what I do for a living, so I can walk in and write. I just have a giant hole where the characters have to get together. So I try and write the books that don't require that, and then I can just bust right along. Ta-da.
Great.
guess-
Okay. Everyone?
No, whoop. Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
All right. I guess for me, the kryptonite is interruptions. It doesn't matter whether we're in the middle of a pandemic or if everything's going fine and it's we're just cruising along. I have glass doors on my office, two double doors that close, and I can remember my kids, because they've grown up with me being a writer. I mean, my oldest is going to be 23 in about a month. So if I've been doing this for 9 years, she was, in her mid-teens, earlier teens. And I can remember, them pressing their faces up, against the glass pane, and, saying, are we going to have dinner? So, when you're cooking along, but they knew better than to interrupt, because interruptions were were hard. I mean, not that I made my children starve. I'm not trying to paint that picture of myself, but, my husband works from home as well, as I was talking to you gals about before. And, they call my husband's office the no-no zone. And then they call my office the absolute no-no zone, because when I'm on deadline, they know better than to interrupt me, because, when your flow is going, any little thing can just throw you right out of the groove. And then you come back and you're like, and it's just kind of the way it is, so that's my kryptonite: interruptions.
Great, thanks, Marianne. The last question from the viewers that I can see so far is from Pamela Shepard, and she says, what is your personal favorite genre to read?
Well, for me, I have two go-to, so it's kind of strange. I grew up, like when I was 15, I started reading historical romance books. Those were really like novels I started reading. And I think it's kind of like my mom, my sisters, my grandmother, everybody was reading them. So to me, it's kind of a nostalgia thing. So when I'm really just needing to get away, that's what I read. And then I also read a lot of YA. I have teenagers, so I try to always read whatever they are, so we can discuss it. And I actually ended up just falling in love with the genre. I enjoy writing it, and I love reading it and everything. So I know it's weird that I write mostly contemporary and paranormal, yet I have historical and YA, and those are my two favorite to read. It's just, I don't know, the way it is, but.
And for me, I tend to go for informational stuff. I use it for background. I use it for character development. And hopefully I can start using it to write scripts for comic books. It fell.
When I'm writing paranormal, I actually don't read paranormal. It's just a little quirk of mine. I stay away from it. I think it's just kind of trying to respect everybody else's work and not accidentally pick up something that, it just happens. You learn stuff as you go, and sometimes you pick things up. So when I'm writing paranormal, I tend to read a lot of mysteries. I read a lot of nonfiction. I like historical Westerns. I like Amish romance. Oddly enough, really just about anything that's kind of outside of paranormal, I will go and read, just because I read so much. So, and then when I'm writing contemporary, I'm reading pure paranormal all the way through, sometimes sci-fi. So
I love paranormal. That's my go-to genre, just about for any time. I also like sci-fi romance, but sci-fi romance is tough because I have specific things that I want to read. I don't necessarily want to read sex will save the world, although sometimes that works. But I like the space opera sci-fi romance. And sometimes those can be a little bit hard to find. But paranormal, I mean, there's a ton of paranormal out there, and I kind of worked my way through a lot of it. So.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I tried to I don't stay away from paranormal when I'm reading per se. I mean, I will stay away from, if I'm writing vampires, I won't read anything vampires, but that doesn't mean I won't read witches. If I'm writing shifters, I won't read shifters, or anything like that. If I'm writing fae, I won't read anything that's fae, because you don't want to be subconsciously influenced, like Jen had said. But I think my go-to stuff is historic, any kind of historic or period piece. And I think it's left over from the books that I read when I was a teenager. I mean, the first real epic romance that I read was Kathleen Wittes's The Wolf and the Dove. I mean, it was like 1,000 pages, and I devoured it when I was 13. And it's the old-fashioned bodice rippers type of books, but I still love them, and they're very soothing to me. And so anything, and I will go to the classics too. Like, I will pick up Jane Austen and I will reread Pride and Prejudice. I will reread Bronte's Wuthering Heights. It's just, those are things that, because I had my degree was in journalism and English literature, that these are things that I know and I love. They're like kind of comfort food for my brain.
Okay, thank you.
What I like to read, I don't read paranormal when I'm writing it. I tend to stick to more of horror or contemporary romantic suspense, or even just like mystery, just anything else. I like a lot of contemporary when I'm writing. I tend to stay away from contemporary when I am writing it, but it's very rare. I don't have that many contemporaries. I'm more paranormal author, so I read a lot of contemporary. I read a lot of like Dan Brown and James Patterson and stuff like that. I liked a lot of Mary Higgins Clark, and just horror, suspense. Not what I mean. It's different than what I write. Definitely, it's just that's what I enjoy reading.
Great, thanks, Millie. So there is a question that came in for Jen Burke, and from Pamela Shepard. She says, "Do you find it hard to write being a female?"
I actually get asked that question a lot. The short answer is no, because I'm not writing necessarily about the experience of a gay man. I'm writing about characters who are going through something and they happen to be gay, or bi, or asexual, or whatever. So it's part of it is knowing what stories are the ones that I can tell. I would not feel comfortable telling a story that was solely based around a character's identity and the fact that they're gay and everything that they go through, because that's not my experience. But I write these characters as, I treat them with respect. I write them with the knowledge that they are real people that live in my head. And I try to do them justice on the page. And tell the story that they're involved in. And I think that it's important for representation to have characters who, happen to be gay and they're off doing other adventures, so that, if a gay man happens to pick up my book and they read it, it's not a story about that character being gay, but it's a story about a gay character who's off having adventures and, being a ghost or being a vampire or what have you, being a king of a mythological shifter kingdom. So they might not necessarily see themselves, but it's somebody they can kind of relate to or see. They can kind of see a character like them doing something that maybe they never thought that they would ever see a character doing in a book. So that's what I try to keep in my head as I'm writing.
Thanks, Jen. Just 2 more comments from Pamela Shepard. For Marianne, she says, those are great books that everyone should read. I believe that means the books that you were talking about. And for Millie, she says, James Patterson rocks. So we're coming to the top of the hour. So I just want to give everyone a couple of minutes, whether you want to talk about any giveaways you want to do, where readers can find you, and what you're working on that's coming up.
Sure, I'll start. Thank you, guys. Thank you. No need to do anything. Actually, I am doing a giveaway for readers who join my Empty Worlds group and go in there and comment telling me that they came from watching this on YouTube. Random gift cards will be given. So yay! And so the next thing that's coming out for me is a paranormal dating agency book. I've just had one that just came out, and the next one that's coming out is a PDA. It's actually on my birthday, April 17th, and it's called Dragon Rights, kind of like bragging rights. You guys know me and these punny titles. Anyways, it's a menage with dragons, so it's gonna be a lot of fun. And check out the Empty Worlds group and join. And thank you.
Thanks, Millie.
I'm doing a giveaway if you join my readers group, Jen Burke's Epic Adventurers on Facebook, and just put in there that you saw this live stream. I'm going to give away ebook copy of Not Dead Yet. So that's my first book in the Not Dead Yet series. As for what's coming from me next, actually I have a book out on Tuesday in Eve Langlay's FUC Academy world. So that's the shared world that she opened up. It's called Jumping the Bull, and it's about a badass bison shifter and a whoop-ass whooping crane shifter. And they end up on what's supposed to be a simple undercover mission, and of course it's not very simple. So that's out on Tuesday. On Monday, the Not Dead Yet series is coming out in a ebook bundle, so you can get all 3 books in the series for $9.99 instead of $15 as what they normally are. So, I mean, if you haven't read any of my books, that's a good way to get them. So that's coming out on the 13th. And then the next major release that I don't have a date for it yet, but there are going to be 3 more books coming in the Not Dead Yet series, probably starting in 2021.
I think we're all waiting for everybody else to speak. We're all trying to be polite. I've already posted my giveaway in the group because this is my 3rd session today. So there's 2 in there from me. There is, if you like romantic suspense, my book Payback is already free. That's under the name Kristen Hart. That's free everywhere. It's a perma-free. And I'm giving away the 2nd book in that series, Retaliate. And then there's also another post where I'm giving away Barely Dreaming. It's my polar bear shifter novella that's available. Usually you sign up for my newsletter for that, but I'm giving it away just for participating and being here for this. As for what I'm working on, There's a new London Hale coming out in a different format that we were contracted to do. It hasn't officially been announced yet, so I'm waiting for that. But that is coming. I have a book that I was supposed to release in December called Reindeer Ripple. It's in my Mates and Macarons kind of PNR comedy series, and that will eventually come out once I get out of my chaos-induced brain space, and I'll just release a Christmas book in spring or summer. So that'll be coming out soon enough, and then after that, I really don't know.
My next release, I just had a release on Tuesday in a Howells romance, and it's called The Wolf's Secret Witch. It's a little different from the other ones that I've put out because this one is a little darker and a little heavier on the suspense. It's the first in a series within the Howells romance series. So unfortunately, the next one won't be out until September because I've got other things that I'm working on. And, primarily what I'm working on right now is it's called Big Girls Don't Scry. And it's the book that's going to be in Robin Peterman's Magic and Mayhem series that releases in June. So that, you can look forward to that. And if you sign up for my newsletter, you can do that through the contact on my website, and I will, which is www.mariammaria.com, which I will post in the group. That you automatically get Hunter's Blood, which is book 1 in the Cursed by Blood series for free for signing up for that. But if you ping me in my reader group, which is called the Red Veil, which I'll also put in the group, I have audio codes for Hollow's End that I will be giving away first come, first served, because I think I only have like 25. So I have UK and US. So I will put that information in the group. So please.
So my next books that are going to come out, I have contemporary RHs, but my next one's going to be a Paranormal Academy RH series. I haven't shared that outside of my reader group yet, so you guys are hearing about it first, but that will come out, I think, at the end of May or June. I haven't decided which date yet, but that's what I'm working on now. My reader group is Cassidy's Beautiful Bookworms, and if you join there, then I do have audio codes for the first book in the Black Hollow series, and then I also have some ebooks that you can be entered to win. But usually my readers can get most of my books off of Booksprout, but that's all in my reader group. But I'll post all of that in the RTC world as well, Facebook group. That's it.
Okay, I guess it's down to me now. People can find me at Viola's Readers at Facebook, and I'll be giving away a copy of Hot and Haunted audiobook, as well as a copy of One Part Human audiobook. And so I'll make a drawing out of people who enter there and mention that they were here. Currently, I'm working on Bride of the Witch King, which will be out next week, Friday. And I'm working on about 7 or 8 other books from different series that basically it depends on which reader prods me at the right moment to spur that little thing along. So thank you very much for seeing us, and I'm going to wave bye-bye.
Great. Thanks for everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye!
Thank you.
Thank you.